Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Huddle. And I'm so excited. This is our sixth episode of the Daily Huddle. And I can't wait. The individual that I'm bringing on today, his name is Scott Duffy. He is somebody that I call on when I want to have information about how to be the best I can be in the space of being an entrepreneur, when I want to know about dealing with finances, when I want to come up with a strategic process. He is who I call. And I also call him just because he makes me laugh and he makes me have a really, really good time as we go through and we navigate this process. Also, want to give you guys an update and what the real share is all about. It's about us being able to come together, family to family, old school style, and share what's working. It truly does take a village, and this victory is going to be won on the home front. This victory is going to be won sitting around the kitchen table and discussing together collectively through collaboration. What is it that we're doing? What have we uncovered to help navigate through this process? I had shared with all of you, had a really, really tough week. My sister-in-law, who went in to see her dad at the nursing home, was sent away and was told that he had been showing flu symptoms, and she left only to receive a phone call the next night, and that's 2 nights ago, saying that her dad had passed away. And we just got word this morning that it was due to the coronavirus. I want to just share this with all of you is because we are responsible for our wellness. We're responsible for owning our wellness. We're responsible for our response. And we're also not responsible for um, other people's happiness. It's really important for us to be able to be strong and share, what our needs are. And it's okay to get information. It's okay to get feedback from your doctors. But when you have a gut response and you feel like you need to really, really pursue what you're feeling inside, do not discount that. A couple days ago, I had reached out because I needed to get a refill for a prescription. I also had blood work that had came in, and three separate times I went to the hospital, have the appointment set up via Zoom, a phone call, that I did not feel the need to come in due to my compromised immune system to come into the hospital. And I was denied that twice. And on the third time, I had said, I'm going to have to look for another option. But me coming in after being in this space of being quarantined for the last 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks since March 13th, Friday the 13th, I did not want to make my first visit to the hospital, especially because it wasn't to get a PET scan. It was simply to get a refill as well as to get blood work results shared. So I'm happy to say I did have my phone call this morning and was able to go ahead and get my prescription filled. And the doctor came back and was absolutely beautiful and got it. So I encourage all of you out there to own your wellness and to go within as you go ahead and get advice and feedback. Just because you're being told something doesn't mean that that's the path that you should take. I encourage all of you to gather as much information as you can to make the best decision possible. Up, my friend Scott Duffy, who I'm going to be bringing in, and he's just had this incredible career. He's lost everything. He's made millions. He's one of the things that he's done, which is really, really impressive. He sold his last company.
Just hearing that gives me heartburn. Just hearing that.
Well, and I want to see your
Wow.
face. Well, here he's a guy who sold his last company to Richard Branson, and he always finds time, for his best friend. I mean,
Mhm.
you're just a really awesome best friend. Duffy. I
It's
um
so funny because
I
we
love you.
we picked we picked up the phone about a month ago, and I don't remember what we originally what it was about, but we ended up being on the phone for like 3 hours. We were
Oh,
on
4.
on the
It
phone.
was 4 hours.
It was a 4 we just
Yes.
there was so much that we talked about life, we talked about family, we talked about priorities, we talked about decisions, we, like, talked about living a life centered around wellness. It was really awesome. And you know, I appreciate you for who you are. I appreciate you sharing your journey because I know that there are times where you may not want to get up and do what you're doing right now. Or there may be times where but you do, and you show up and you do it because you want to help others
Mhm.
and you're showing up for others. And that's the way you've always been. So
Mhm. Well,
uh,
you're the same way. I think that's why we love to play together in our
mhm,
playground that we create. I mean, I there's not a project that I wanna work on. Starting from the California Women's Conference, but 13 years ago when I called you and I was 1.8 million in a deficit,
yeah.
and in 17 days, I was able to, through the help
Can we
of
laugh
you.
about that now?
We cried a lot about it. Remember that?
Yeah, we did, we
Oh my
did,
gosh. We,
but got
uh,
through it.
we got
And
through it.
and you know, it's funny because for all of you that know Michelle, Michelle has got a lot of amazing ideas, and every time that we talk, there's something there's something that she's really passionate about that we're doing, and so before we started this call and I got on Zoom with Michelle, she's like, "Duffy, I got something for you." Love fest. And so no, that's really awesome. And it's
Well,
so
and
I
and
mean,
I wanna talk about that a little bit more because what's
yeah.
starting to happen, and especially since this diagnosis, is that
Mhm,
stuff's coming up and we're sharing it, but it's the ideas are not going anywhere. They're just getting stronger. They're just
mhm,
getting I'm more passionate. We started planning out Love Fest
mm,
2020, which was a celebration around my 50th birthday,
mm,
and I wanted to do something different. My 40th birthday, I had 30,000 people at my birthday
yeah.
at Taste of Ladera. I had Mark McGrath singing "Happy Birthday," up on stage. I did a whole crowd surf. I mean, it was truly magical. And for this time, I want to do happy birthday around my 50th. So I'm celebrating 50 May 2nd and invited my wellness team family. And then I wanted to live stream that out, similar to what we did with International Women's Day, where we broke the International Guinness Book of World Record. We had over 200 people presented at that event online. So everybody from Gabrielle Bernstein, Don King showed up. David Meltzer was there. I mean, you were there. And so I want to do this time where just because we can't be together physically, we absolutely can connect from around the world. And the ironic thing is, I started building this out with my team of 40 people from around the planet. Rose Tafoya is on here, and she's taken up programming, who did the programming for California Women's Conference. And we started planning this back in November, and it really started taking off in January. So I'm excited because Scott Duffy, are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
You've been shared.
I've
And
been
what that
sharing.
means, yes,
Okay,
we're going around the planet and we are doing the biggest share that the planet has ever seen. And
okay.
I am sharing with people who show up in their genius and share what they know. And just like me, who gets so excited, about doing these calls, you get so excited. I
Mhm,
love hearing you in action
mm,
because you're showing up in your full heart. You're totally present. No, no bullshit, just
mm,
pure integrity of like, all right, this is the pitfalls I face. This is what you can
mhm,
do. This is how you can
yeah,
navigate through this. And so what we've done is with the California Women's Conference and having the real share be an extension of that is we looked at career, physical, financial, social, and community. And we found through the years and years that we worked with Gallup Poll that the happiest people on the planet were individuals that were doing all five of those areas. And so rather than come into this and feel like you have to have everything figured out, I know. I figured out how to put the superhero team together. You being on
mm,
that superhero team and
mm,
you taking on the channel of career. and talking about entrepreneurs. So what I want to do is I want to start this party off
You
today.
see, when you're around Michelle, if you're around her for more than a couple minutes, she signed you up for something before you leave. She signed you up for something.
Don't
I'm
be
not
using
sure.
my stuff.
I
The
think I
neighbor,
know
the
what I
neighbor
just got
said that.
signed up for, but I'm not entirely sure. But that's
Well,
okay. We're going to talk about this later. But I
Mary
think
McGettigan said this to me. She goes, "Oh my gosh, with your events," she goes, "it's the craziest things. It's like," she was my neighbor next door. She
Mhm.
goes, "You got my husband, Tim McGettigan, to pick up trash at the Taste of Ladera." She goes, I didn't even get him to, you know, take care of diapers, and
Wow.
you got him to take care of trash." And so I said, "Well, the CC&Rs, when you move on the street and when you become my friend, you automatically are starting out, picking up trash or helping in. I mean, it's doing whatever we can do
Mhm.
to help out." So with that, what I want to do is get into the meat of this because I have quoted you at the Patterson household, and I keep saying, "Well, you know what I learned with Scott Duffy?" And I'm excited because you are hopefully going to be able to be on Wednesdays every week. We have my doctors, Ian, who
Mhm.
is coming on. We've also got Dr. Matt. But I want to have the perspective of your emotional well-being when it comes to finances.
Mm,
And
mm.
I want to know what you are telling people that they can do, if they're put in a flight and fright situation. And we've talked about this, with the diagnosis and being told, stage 4, you have 90 days to live. You get in this flight and fright mentality. And so I want to go through and talk about today what exactly my listeners, my tribe, my family and friends can do today to start alleviating this pain and this struggle, specifically with their finances, because a lot of my pain comes from that.
Well, I mean, that's a big question today because the world today looks a lot different than it did 2 weeks ago. And I think that with all that we have going on outside of us, all of the news that we see on television, we go to our favorite news website, everything looks negative. We watch the stock market drop, we hear about all the new cases of coronavirus, and there's so much uncertainty. Is this something that we're going to be the way life is going to be for a week, a month, a summer, a year? We just don't know. And what that does is I think it creates a lot of fear in people. And that's not a fun way to live. And it also creates a lot of anxiety, certainly around business. So, I know that we all know that there are a lot of big companies that will not make it through this period. And the reason is that their customers have disappeared. We know that there's small businesses. We know that there's entrepreneurs, micro businesses, solopreneurs, people like you and me. And so, with all of this going on and all of this uncertainty out there today, there's just one thing, there's only one thing that you can really control, and that's your focus. And so the question is, what do you focus on today? And the answer as it relates to your finances is simple. You focus on cash. You focus on preserving your cash. And there's really three ways that I've been sharing with people to do this. Three things that I want you to focus on. The first is this is cash preservation. And what that means is because there's so much uncertainty, because we have people that have lost their jobs, or they're concerned they're going to lose their jobs, or they've been furloughed, so they have reduced hours, or they're concerned they might lose their business, the restaurants are closed. We have to hold on to as much of our cash as we possibly can through this period. So, what I recommend is this start by printing out your last 2 months' bank statements. It's really super simple. Print out your bank statements and go through them line by line and take a look at all the auto payments that you have every single month. And I want you to delete, cancel every one of those auto payments that you do not absolutely need. And the thing is, all of us not only find stuff that we don't need, but we typically find stuff that we didn't even remember that we were paying for. So, number one, kill the auto payments. Number two, to help relax during this period and really own your wellness, is anyone that you have a big payment to every month, whether it is your landlord for your rent, it is your bank for your mortgage, it's a credit card, it's a car payment, whatever it is. What I'd like you to do is call, reach out and be proactive, not reactive. Don't be on your heels, get on your toes and call all of those big lenders. And I want you to renegotiate terms with them because everyone is doing it. I know this through firsthand knowledge. I know this through my friends and people like so if you're going to be late on rent or you can't afford to pay rent, like here in California, you can't be evicted. Call your landlord and talk about this and how you're going to work through this together. You may be able to get your rent deferred. I know as it relates to cars, car companies are delaying payments 1 to 3 months without affecting your credit. Credit card companies are delaying your payments 1 to 3 months without affecting your credit. The thing is, it's your job to be proactive and reach out. Now, you're going to be on the phone for a long time because there's a lot of people making these calls right now all over the country and a limited number of people to pick up the phone. So take a day. It might take you a couple, but it will make you feel so much better and so much more secure because you'll be able to hold on to so much more cash. So the number one thing I want you to do is that protect your cash. The number two thing is I want you to adapt. The number one quality for all of us to have during times like this is adaptability. And the way I think about it is this. I'm a big meditator and I've studied Buddhism. And in Buddhism, we use this term shoshin. And shoshin means beginner's mind. It means that we approach every single thing every single day as if it's the first time we've ever seen it. I remember one time I was listening to Phil Jackson, the legendary basketball coach who coached maybe the two greatest players in the NBA, Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. And he was asked, what is it that makes them them? What's the difference that makes Kobe and MJ number one versus everybody else? And his answer was just this. It was so Shoshin. He said, every time they step on the floor, they come with a completely open mind. And because they're completely open, they learn at a rate that is so much far superior than everybody else. So I need you to be incredibly adaptable for your business because the products and services that worked for you today that you may have been selling 2 weeks ago may not be the things that people need today. So when you adapt, the easiest way to do it is this. It's instead of trying to figure out what the market wants, and if your product is solving those problems, is start listening. Start asking your customers, start asking your friends and your family, what has happened to you over this period? What new needs do you have that maybe you didn't anticipate? And does my product meet those needs? Can I adapt it? Or is there something else that you need? I want to be really clear about something, super clear. There is money everywhere right now. This is a really important thing to take away. When the market crashed in 2008 and 2009, the Great Recession, when it crashed, it was for structural reasons. The financial system, the banks were undercapitalized. The mortgage industry, there were all these bad loans. It was a systemic problem. The issues that we're having now aren't systemic; they're event driven, and this event will end. And people have put aside more cash than any time in history. The cash is out there. The question is, do you have a business that's meeting people's current needs? And they've changed a lot in the last 2 weeks. And Michelle, if you give me just a sec, I'd love to share a couple of examples of people I work with or I talk to and how they're pivoting their businesses. Because for people that are trying to figure all of this out, sometimes hearing what others are doing can be really instructive. And maybe one of these things sparks an idea.
Well, and I think too, you and I, and that's why I'm so excited to be able to go ahead and have a tag team and share with you, what we're learning, because a lot of what you're talking about is related to our wellness directly. And in the event that we're having is an attack on our wellness specifically. And so having the feedback about, one is your attitude, because that's directly related to what you focus on. If you have a bad attitude, that's what you're going to be focusing on.
Mhm.
And I love the information that you're saying. So yes, share the information and share what others have done that have helped them navigate through this.
And you know, when we talk about focus and we talk about how it affects our wellness and the way that we feel, I think that it works like this. I think that our brains are just like Google. Whatever question you ask your brain, it's going to give you an answer for. So if over the last 2 weeks you're looking around, because there's two questions that everyone is asking all throughout the day, especially right now. what does all this mean? And what should I do? The other thing that they're doing is they're asking themselves questions that sometimes lead them down a rabbit hole. They're asking themselves questions like, why is this always happen to me? Like, why am I in this situation? Oh my gosh, I suck. Like they're
The
running these
why
things through the
me?
mind. The
Yeah, the
why
why
me?
me.
Why me? And what happens is if you whatever question you ask, you get results for in Google. So I've done this. If you ask Google, you type in, why do I suck? You get 7.5 million answers in less than a second. And your brain does the same thing. And here's the thing, the questions you ask determine what you focus on, and what you focus on determines the way you feel. And the way that you feel determines how you behave. And all of this wraps into your wellness. And so if you take the time to stop yourself right now and get yourself in the habit of asking yourself empowering questions. Okay, whatever's going on out there, how can I use this to my advantage? How can I use this to my advantage to build a better business? How can I use this to my advantage to generate more income and more cash than I ever thought possible? Where are the opportunities? How can I find opportunities? I'm open, universe. Just if you change the question, what will happen is the answers you'll get will come back. And if I ask myself, how can I change my product to be a better product for today's market, generate more income? Your Google like brain is going to answer that question. And if you keep asking it enough, you're going to start to feel amazing. And one more thing, Michelle, when all of this stuff is going on outside of us, it's so it's so easy to start to operate from a perspective of lack.
Mhm.
And I think that lack is a real negative influence on our health. And so I would challenge everybody to do this one thing every single day. I've been doing this for years. I would set your alarm on your phone, and I would normally say do it once, but during this time, I'm say do it 2 times a day. And when that alarm goes off, I want you to title it. Actually, go in and title it your gratitude alarm. And when that goes off, for me, it goes off at 7:30 in the morning and 7:30 at night. I want you to say out loud 3 things that you're grateful for. 3 things that you're grateful for. And do it for the next 30 days. Because here is the thing, gratitude changes everything because it shifts your perspective and it gets you to focus on what you have versus what you don't have, which changes the way you feel, which changes the health of your body and all of your energy. And then finally, if you want extra credit on this, when you do it in the morning, this exercise, I want you to ask yourself 2 more questions. The first is, what are 3 things I love about myself? And don't just say it out loud. Look in the mirror, look at yourself and ask yourself, what are 3 things I love about myself? And say them out loud. And I always ask this question, Michelle, you know, I have kids. I love my kids with everything. What would happen if I gave myself the same amount of love that I give my kids? What if I turn it around? And I'm so non-judgmental with my kids. Like they can do something wrong, I love them just as much. What if I were that non-judgmental about myself? So you're going to ask, here's 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things I love about myself, and then finally, what are 3 things I forgive myself for? 3 things I forgive things out loud. And again, the dialogue that you're having, the questions you're asking determine what you focus on. What you focus on determines how you'll behave. And I think, Michelle, what this does is it creates a completely different health field of energy around you and inside your body.
I absolutely love that, and one of the things we'll be doing is putting that on the link below and over to the show because again, it's about building on these habits. And you and I have talked about this, Scott, and that was, when I had the original, diagnosis. I was sitting, on the lake with my husband and he was reading Jordan Peterson's book and chapter 2 of the 12 rules. Chapter 2 was treat yourself like somebody you're responsible for.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he goes, Michelle, he goes, you don't do that. He
Mhm.
goes, what if, like you said earlier, what if you were to treat yourself, like the love that you give for your kids and for your child. I mean, we would go to the end of the earth to make sure that we got our kids what we needed. And so that was Thursday night. I went in Tuesday and was given the diagnosis. And I sat back and I said, you know what? That's exactly what it's about. We can
Yeah.
decide, do we want to show up and play out the struggle and play this out in fear? Or do we want to show up and love ourselves deeply? Because when we love ourselves deeply, we in turn love others deeply,
Mm,
and show up that way. And to me, this is a massive reset that's happening on our planet.
mm,
And I know for one, I want to be hanging out with the folks that are, at 7:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. They're talking about what they're grateful for,
mhm,
and they're treating themselves like somebody they're responsible for. And not only are they taking the oxygen mask and putting on themselves, but they're also creating this oxygen mask that's dropping down over their entire family
mm.
and their extended family. So I love the piece of you. What do you do, Scott, when you don't want to be your happy-go-lucky self? I mean, what happens when you have those days? Um, and I already know the answer to this.
Mhm,
You and I have talked, but what happens when you're just in that funk and you don't want to fake it till you make it? What do you do
mm.
then?
Well, I think that when you do these things every day, when you make it a practice, it becomes like a muscle. And so it becomes easier to get through those kinds of days. I think that you have less of those days because that muscle is strong. I mean, I am adamant about my gratitude every morning. I'm adamant about those 3 questions. Um,
And think
when
about
they
it
don't
too.
work, when they don't work, freaking love Haagen-Dazs.
Ah. Hey, yourself, Eric refers to it. You were just seeing my husband who's up for husband of the year. And when I'm beating myself, he goes, Michelle, he goes, treat it as daily-ish. You missed a day. Okay. Don't beat yourself up over it. Get back on track the next day. No time like the present to start it. But it's okay. It's okay. I think we're so hard on ourselves, and oftentimes we end up being that bully, on the playground to ourselves. We're our worst critics. And sometimes, you know what, all we need is just to be like, you know what? It's okay.
Well, I mean, this is what I've learned as I've gotten older. What I've learned is, to practice allowance and just allowing things to happen the way that they're happening, and not you you can wake up and you can go into your day and you know it's not your day. You know things aren't gonna, you know how hard you're pushing. It's kinda like this. When when an economy shifts like it is right now, and we've been doing things successfully for a while, and let's say we've been making money, we've been doing really well. Well, our circumstance may change and our market may change, and we want to get back to where we were. And so what we end up doing is we do the same thing that we did to make us successful in the past, but we do it more and harder, more and harder, more and harder. And what that does is, and we're not learning, by the way, what we're doing is the same thing more and harder, more and harder, more and harder. And what that does is it digs us deeper and deeper into a hole. And the reason this is important is I feel like that same kind of like fighting the energy and fighting what's going on, kind of in the universe in that day or whatever, is sometimes you just need to know. At least I need to know when just to let go. And I've gotten really good over the past few years at just walking away from the day and doing something different and shaking it up and knowing it's just a day. And whether it's going to exercise or moving around, or maybe even sometimes turning on Netflix with that thing of Haagen-Dazs and having a bite. But what I'm not in, what
What's
I
your favorite? What's your favorite, by the way? What's your
oh
favorite
man,
flavor?
is there
Share. You
one?
got to
Is
share.
there
Oh,
one? I'm a chocolate guy. I'm not a vanilla guy. I'm a chocolate guy. But but this is really important, I think, is to allow things to happen. And if you're just not in that kind of that energy, I walk away and I really try and shake it up. Look, here's the thing. What happens with most people, when they're kind of fighting, and kind of they're stuck in a rut, or they're not really moving in the way that they want to, in the direction they want to, what they got to do is they got to shake up the energy. And there's a couple ways to do that. The fastest way to do that is to change the way you move, because motion creates emotion. You change the way you move, you change the way that you feel. The second way you do that is you change the people around you, right? You shift up the people around you. And this is so important. Whether you have a new goal, you want to go in a new direction, you want new ideas, you're the average of the 5 people you spend your time with, nothing more and nothing less. And when people say, "Yeah, that sounds cool, but maybe not," just do this simple example. If you write down the names of the 5 people you spend the most time with, just write down their names. And next to each name, write down what you think they earn. Add it all up and divide by 5. And the odds are that is exactly what you earn. And you see, it's a financial example, but applies to every area of your life. People who are happy hang around happy people. People who are well and practice wellness hang around people who practice wellness. So again, if you're not getting the result that you want, the difference between where you are today and where you want to go may be as simple as looking at the last 5 numbers you dialed on your phone. So that's the way I do it. It's people and it's movement, and allowing myself and not beating myself up. I just don't beat myself up a lot.
Well, and when you actually are responsible for your wellness and you own that, then you can show up and you can say, "You know what? I don't want that energy in my space. I don't want that peace." And I learned this last year, and you and I have talked a lot about this, but my job for this last year was to bring joy into my life 100%. You know how hard that is to do at times when you have family.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
You always you give so much joy to everyone else,
Mm,
right? We've talked about this.
yeah.
You love on everybody else. You give so much joy to everyone else. You give to your kids, you give to your husband, you give to everybody else. You give to millions of women through the conference. And the last person you turn the love on was yourself
Yeah.
in the same way. And but I'm not pointing fingers because we all do it. And I think it's such a great lesson. I'm saying that because even while you're talking about it, you've got the biggest smile on your face. And I know that by sharing, you're experiencing joy. So how do we sorry, I'm asking you the question.
Ah,
How do
you
we
can because 'cause you're in my playground. You're in my
how
playground.
how do we turn things how do we turn that love back on ourselves? And how do we kind of experience that how does a person like you feel as good giving to yourself as you do other people?
So that is an awesome question, and if you'd asked me a year ago, I would not have had the answer. Probably why I am so grateful for the diagnosis and for this blessing because it truly, every single day, every single hour, checked myself before I wrecked myself. It really it made me live in a space of integrity and all out and being present. When I wasn't living present, I felt pain and fear, tremendous amount of fear. But when I got really present with what my needs are, and really practicing what I've been learning, and that is this real share. It's coming to the table in conversations with people that I love and sitting down and just being honest and saying, you know what, this is need. This is what I can bring to the table. This is what I'm happiest when I'm doing this genius, and to stay in that lane and to really do that because so often we find ourselves, and at least I found myself, is trying to people please. And the more that I tried, I mean, I couldn't be responsible for their happiness. And my husband made the comment to me a while ago. I had these events. Taste of Ladera got up to 30,000 people, and it was this spectacular event. We helped 22 charities. I mean, it was over the top, and I would get back home and he would say to me, he goes, "What's wrong?" And I'd be like, "I'm upset because, this one person complained and he was upset about XYZ at the event." And it bummed me out. And my husband would just look at me and he's like, "Michelle," he goes, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, 29,000 people, had this amazing time. And one person comes back and complains and you're upset about it. And so what this year has taught me is that I am responsible for my own internal ecosystem. I'm responsible for either showing up in love or showing up, for a cry for help. And when I'm able to really own my wellness and my playground and not just go along with something because I don't want to piss someone off. But I'm able to own it because I know it's the right thing and I know it's filled in with integrity. Um, Only when I'm doing that am I able to live in the sweet and present moment. And that's why, I push back 3 separate times to not go in to the doctors and make myself susceptible to, anything that I might pick up, when I have and my family have been doing such a good job in being this quarantine. And so it was a time for me to not be afraid, to recognize that out of the 8 billion people that were put on the planet, God put me in this body with this soul, to be aware of what this mind is creating and what my body needs. And if I'm not going to stand up for myself and voice my needs and voice my opinion, then I can't expect anyone else to do that. And that's how I've been having. I mean, I went Duffy from having, this diagnosis and being told I had 90 days to live to having my best year on the planet to date, and that still includes the coronavirus, you know?
So
So that
so
says something big
s-
time.
so you had your best year on the planet, and but when we begin to own our wellness and own our happiness and be responsible for ourselves, we make choices for ourselves, and that doesn't make everyone else happy.
But it
You know,
makes you happy, and
it
that's the
makes you happy.
responsibility. Every
That's
human
right.
has the responsibility and to be able to do this for themselves. And I go back to the other example that my mom taught me. My mom said to me when I asked her, I said, "Mom, are you going to do cannabis? Are you going to do chemo?" And this is right after I got the results that said that my tumors had dropped 52%. I had done a cannabis protocol for 8 weeks. Um, Thank you, Joe Aaron, through MJ's. And the cancer actually dropped my original tumor 40% and what had metastasized 52%. And so I said this to my mom, and my mom said to me, she goes, "I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if I would do chemo or cannabis." And I was upset. We got off the phone abruptly and I called her back the next day and I apologized. And I said, "You know what, Mom? I'm doing the same thing that I don't want done to me. And that is shaming me or somebody trying to convince me that I should be doing what they think is the proper thing." And so what I did was I put together this wellness team family, similar to what you've done with your mastermind group, that I'm so happy I'm a part of, and that you're a part of mine. And this is about us bringing these groups together, but it's putting together a conversation where individuals can come to the table and they don't have to be afraid of fear tactics or shaming or stigmas or judgment. They can come to the table and they can have conversations around what's the best possible solution for them. And they can take that information in and then they get to own their wellness and make the decision on what's the best protocol for them. So I'm going back in along with the help from my wellness team family and pulling in all these pieces and putting together a protocol so that when people have a WTF moment, they can call their wellness team family. You are who I call. And I put down this list and actually shared, because I listened to your show where you brought up some of these points about calling in to the auto payments. And I did that. That was the first thing that I communicated to my husband, CPA finance guy.
Mhm.
Oftentimes we have, the cobbler's kids sometimes, don't wear shoes. And we need to sometimes hear that from our friends and get this valuable information, um, from each other.
I just wanna ask you one more question because I'm really fascinated by this, and I think it would help all of us to know how you did this. I know when you made choices with regard to how you were gonna, treat the cancer, and you decided to go with a cannabis protocol, and decided not to do chemo right out of the bat, and I know that everyone wasn't happy. How do you when there's when when we are in a position in any area of our life where we need to make a decision that is a very important decision, and what we decide for ourselves isn't necessarily popular with strong minds around us, how do we hold our ground and move gracefully through that? How do we do it?
So so what you're talking about is really falling in love with yourself
Mm,
and trusting yourself.
trusting
That's
yourself.
that's when you turn that corner where you're not coming to the table saying, I've got to have everything figured out. I've got to do everything myself. There's nobody out there to help me. You're recognizing that you need to be vulnerable and you need to ask for the help. And I'll give you an example. When the doctors from my team, which have 180 years experience, I put this kick ass mofo team of doctors and wellness providers together. I've got 82 families. You're part of it. Your girls have been over my house. And I put this group together. And so they came to me and said, Michelle, we've come together and we feel that the next step is for you to do radiation. And when they told me this, I didn't get upset. I didn't cry. I just responded to them and I said, all right, we've been working on this for 9 months and I've been getting my body ready. I've put this team together. I know these phenomenal, superheroes. I know their heart and let's go for it. And that's when, a week later they called back and we ended up going with another plan. But, but for me, what I've been doing and what you've been doing with your tribe is we're creating a safe environment. And so the best way to create that safe environment is to bring in trusted advisors that you can go ahead and get the facts, get the information. They also, we go through, we have a family rules of engagement that I have them all sign, and I can help you set up your wellness team family. They all sign a document so that I can go ahead and show up in my best self and not bring fear to the table, and they can do the same. And what we did was we all filled out these questionnaires. It talked about what's your genius, how do you love to show up, what really lights you up, what do you need. This is a two-way street. This is not about, it's not one-sided. And in fact, just like cancer affects the entire family, so does the virus. It affects everybody. And so when we can come together and stop pretending and stop hiding and and really, and I said this yesterday with Dr. Matt on the phone. I mean, we're at a place, as a country, as a world, being one family is, the shit's hit the fan. And for us to be pointing fingers and to do the blaming game and to blame it on everybody, this is not the time to do that. When we're in flight and fright, it's the time to show up in love so that we can be creative, so that we can start joining efforts and doing what you and I are doing. This, I said to everybody, I said, I'm only going to do this show as long as it brings me joy, because I made a deal that I would put my health and wellness first and foremost. And so what's coming out is, me living all out in full integrity. And I love living in this space, and it's creating results. The real share, our purpose is crowdsourcing miracles, and it's absolutely doing that. And I know in speaking with you,
Mhm,
you and I get, many calls where it brings us to tears
mhm.
because people are saying, "Hey, Michelle, I've been going along with your journey this past year, and it's just given me this feeling of being safe." And that's what it's about.
I wanna ask you about that. So suicide hotlines around the country have been blowing up, and the centers that take suicide calls are completely understaffed right now, and people are getting a lot of bad news. They're getting news that's tough news. They're getting news that, about, the cash that they had in the market, about customers going away, about restaurants being forced to close, all kinds of stuff. What I wanna ask is, when you're faced with really tough news, which you have been, how do you manage through that in a way that enables you to be resourceful and preserve your wellness at the same time?
I'm laughing right now because I'm like, "Oh my god." Okay, because everybody
This is how
knows
we talk
you and
this is how we talk on the phone.
everybody knows you and I are best friends, but I'm like, "Oh my god, that mother he just hijacked."
But
So,
it's
and this
true.
is but I love this too because I think the more that we can have conversations like this and back and
Mhm,
forth, I will give you this answer, and then I wanna open up to, some other questions from the audience, and again, Duffy, I'm so excited to be able to incorporate you and for me to, help out however I can in supporting you. But to answer your question, um, it's really, right now, they had named an ambassador of loneliness back for London, before all this happening. And so you've got a crisis that was happening with loneliness. And so I always like to encourage people is we're using the terminology social distancing, and I would love to rephrase that and have it be social connecting. And this is where individuals can come together. They can not only have conversations around this. I mean, our family, on Friday, we lost 75% of our income, coming in. And so we sat down as a family and we started talking about this. And rather than having no conversation and practicing, social distancing, and when you agree, I mean, we've had more conversations, with
a
friends via
a
Zoom than at any time, I think.
and I love what you just said about family because, I think it's really important, particularly as parents, to share with your kids what's going on, not just the good times. One of my dearest friends, lost his son to suicide 2 years ago last month, and I remember the one thing that he told me is that he tried to be I mean, I know he to be the best dad on the planet. He was very present. He did so much for his kids. He has several kids. But the one thing that he didn't do is he tried never to share the tough stuff. He kind of wanted to be their hero, and he didn't share what was going on that was hard. And looking back, he said he wished that the kids could have seen the hard times and been a part of those so they could see that that's real and they could see him working through it. And so I love what so it's just I think that what you were just talking about with that conversation, it's so important to bring the family and everyone in and talk.
Well, and I think too is being vulnerable. It's hard. It's like I had this persona, and still struggle with it of just, having it all figured out. I'm superwoman. I can do it all. I can bring all this together. And for me to be able to ask for help and be okay with that and be okay if somebody can't help you or if it's not the right time. But
Mhm.
I think the conversation that you and I've had a lot is around this. How can I ask for help? How can I reach out to, potential investors, when I'm working on a big project. How can
Mhm.
I go ahead and cry? It's okay to cry in front of our kids. How many times have I cried in front of you? You know? How many times have you cried in front of me?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know? Oh, let's just be honest with that. I
Mhm.
think what happens is we keep it stuffed inside and we're going through this massive reset. And I think when we can show up for each other and just be vulnerable and just be like, you know what? Yeah, there's some stuff out there that's really, really hard to work through. But there's also some great stuff to be full of gratitude. And
Yeah,
so focusing on that, and that in turn, the number one thing that I found through my whole year when I've asked people is how do they get this, healing, remission? How do they go through it? How do they get this instantaneous remission? And I've talked to folks that have been paralyzed from the neck down. We're going to have Marcus Anderson on the show. I've talked to many, many individuals. JV Crum, was on yesterday and he suffered a massive heart attack.
mm,
But the number one ingredient, you know what it is out of
mm,
everything? Doesn't matter if it's Western medicine, if it's Eastern, if it's across the board. Number one thing is your attitude.
mhm.
And that goes into the first thing that you said in opening up this conversation. And that's what you're focusing on.
Yeah, for sure, for
So
sure.
I think we're on the right track. And I think that you and I, we do what we do because it does bring us so much joy.
Mhm.
And it does act as a reminder that we got this.
Well, we do got this, and I just wanna emphasize that we're all going through this right now. I think I'm particularly connected to entrepreneurs, love entrepreneurs, and being an entrepreneur can be an awfully lonely job. Sometimes you think that you are the only person on the planet that has ever experienced what it is that you're going through. And who do you talk to? You don't necessarily want to tell your investors everything. You can't tell your employees. You don't want to bring it all home. Who do you talk to? And and so right now for all those people that have been impacted, we've all been impacted, but who have been impacted particularly hard by what's going on with the economy. I just want to say that you're not alone. And it is more important than ever to share. And if you're having a particularly difficult time finding the right person to share with or to whatever, reach out to Michelle, reach out to me. We're here to listen, and we're here to help. And we've all been through it. We've all been through highs and lows and ups and downs. I think they talk about what do they talk about? Slowing the curve or changing the curve of the virus. What I think we need to do is learn how to change the curve, right, of kind of the way that we're feeling during these times. And not, when we catch ourselves going into a rut, ask ourselves better questions and reach out to folks. And again, if you don't know the folks to reach out to people like Michelle and me because
Yeah.
we'd love to talk. And by the way, we've heard everything. We've heard everything.
And we've
So
made
it's
pretty much
just
every mistake.
completely non-judgmental. Say
I said
again?
we made all these mistakes. And I think too, another
Yeah.
point just along those same lines and just reinforcing what you're saying is that none of us have it all figured out. None
Yeah.
of us do. And I believe that collectively we
Mhm.
absolutely do. And when you talk about, the entrepreneurship, and when you talk about, reaching out and who these entrepreneurs go to, I feel so connected to women, in particular, who are 93% of the consumer out of the home. They make 93% of the decisions off of wellness. Nothing gets through my house unless it goes past me, and that's including the dentist appointments. Everything. And so there's this feeling that we have, and I definitely have had, of just not being able to provide my family, the right products and the right resources. And that's why I've dedicated the last 15 years in doing the California Women's Conference. The whole thing was set up to be able to provide women resources and tools and wisdoms. And it's like, what happens when we are able to share this information, we end up being, completing that circle. It's we're all spokes of the wheel
Mhm.
versus thinking, which I did before, and I feel like a lot of my, uh, really my gift of the diagnosis was because I had this feeling that I had to take it all on. And it wasn't until I started just saying, hey, you know what? I got this figured out and I know how to do this piece, but I don't know how to do this.
Mm.
And how can we come together and figure this out? Because going back to your whole point, I, I got into a cab. I was going from Boulder to Denver, and it was an hour cab ride. I'm calling it. It's an Uber.
You old
And
person, you.
oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Back when they didn't have phones, but I got in and and this kid, 23 years old, he started asking me questions and I started telling him. He's like, "Well, what were you here for? What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm on this crusade to figure out, what the bleep is available on the planet," and told him about my journey.
Uh-huh.
And he goes, "You're the first person that I told that I have cancer
Mm,
besides my mother."
mm,
And so for me, it's like if we could go ahead and have mama bears around the planet and papa bears around the planet unite, and if we can come together and create a healing home, because I think that the victory is going to be won on the home front. I think that this is all about what we do and how we show up right now at home. And I want to give a compliment to you. I was talking to you the other night, and you asked me, and we were talking because you had your kids, one of your daughters needed something, and you got up right from the show and went and attended to her needs. And I complimented you on that, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't want it to be a distraction." But I'm like, "No, you're a dad." I go,
yeah.
"This is right now, this is what is going to shape our future.
Mhm.
This is what we're telling our kids is that, you know what? Together, individually we don't have this figured out, but together we absolutely can do this. And this is about having real conversations and stopping a podcast so that you can go ahead and do the jobs that we have and
Mhm.
show up for our number one clients.
Mhm.
Our number one clients, they are the people that we are with, and cohabitate, very,
Mm.
very closely right now, very closely.
Amazing.
Any questions? Let's jump in, and we've only got a couple minutes left, which we've been answering a lot of these questions before. And I just want to give a shout out to the folks that are on. Thank you, Barry, who also runs an amazing show. We've got Annie Flanagan who showed up. We've got, of course, Rose. Rose, I think you've been to every single one of these broadcasts and has just been giving some really insightful feedback and popping in. Like I said, this is about, what can we do when Scott and I are producing and putting these shows together. It comes with, these amazing teams that rally behind us. I want to give a special shout out. We just started Lily yesterday for our director of programming, and I shared with you too. And we'll be giving an opportunity for Rose to share what's happening with programming with Wellness Week. We just happened to create Wellness Week as a virtual reality because of what I was going through with my diagnosis and having to lay low key, and then also bringing everyone over to our house and celebrating this healing home. We're going to be actually going to Dave Meltzer's house next week. Tomorrow, we're actually going to be going to Cynthia Kersey's house. And so we've just got this incredible, incredible lineup of individuals, but really bringing it back to hometown, bringing it back to having the
Why
conversations.
why didn't you come to my house?
Well, I'm at your house, right? In fact, I don't want to put you on the spot because this is actually going to be going into the questionnaire that we send out to our speakers who are coming on board. But Trina Rodan, who has 11 kids, my son is her 11th. They even have a bed for him. It's his best friend is Alex. And so, Scott, it was awesome You definitely need to go back. This is one for the vaults that you got to watch. But she went around with her